Hi, everybody. Joanna here. Today I'm going to be talking about books that I found disturbing. So these are books that I found uncomfortable, that got under my skin for various reasons. This is not the same thing as a book that's dark in tone or existentialist in theme, though I do gravitate towards those type of books quite often. These are books that really pulled me out of my comfort zone. And I like that now and then. I appreciate an author who can elicit that kind of experience in a skillful way. I think that there's room for that kind of thing in fiction, though I know that not everybody picks up a book for that experience. So these are not universal recommendations, but I just want to share my list here. And I know that this is a subjective list, by the way. So maybe some of you have read these books and don't find them as disturbing as I did, but I'll try to explain as best I can in a spoiler free way why I did. Okay, the first book I have to talk about is Blood Meridian by McCarthy. And so this particular book is about the business of scalping Indians for profit. So, with a premise like that, you can imagine the gore and bloodshed that's explored in this book, which could be considered historical fiction. It takes place in the 1850s at the Texas Mexico border. And I often describe this book as the most atmospheric book I've ever read because there is so much incredible variation with the desert settings from page to page. You just get these lush, incredible descriptions, but it's also very bleak. McCarthy explores some very dark concepts about humanity, about violence and death in his books. And this is by far the darkest of the McCarthy books I've read. I've only read a few of them, but this was definitely the darkest. Another one, though, from McCarthy that I would also say was pretty disturbing and got to me personally was The Sunset Limited, and this is a drama, basically. It's like a play, and there's an HBO adaptation, which is excellent. But the reason that this one got to me is that it has one of the most realistic depictions of nihilism that I've ever read. If you want to know what a true nihilist, like how a true nihilist thinks about the world, I mean, maybe I'm oversimplifying it by saying it that way. I'm sure there are many variations of nihilism that exist. I felt like the one in this particular book, though, was very convincing. So, this is about two men who find themselves in a situation where one of the men is black, the other one is white. That is their names in the book. And black is coming from the perspective of a religious mindset, trying to show hope to this person, this white professor who has just decided he's done with life and doesn't see religion as the answer to anything, just doesn't see any truth or value in it. And the conversation they have back and forth is basically what this book is about. And I was surprised because I actually had a lot of compassion at the end of this book, which I know that doesn't make it sound like a book that should be on this list. But the depiction of nihilism was probably the most convincing I've ever read. And that was what made this book so disturbing for me personally. Now, I can't talk about McCarthy without talking about an author who was very influenced by McCarthy, and that is R. Scott Baker with his Prince of Nothing trilogy. The third book even opens with a Blood Meridian quote, which happens to be my favorite quote in Blood Meridian, by the way. But this particular series, The Prince of Nothing, deals with a world that has endured an apocalypse in the past. And it is also looking at an impending apocalypse on the horizon. It's also a world that has a holy war that is in the works. And it's also very brutal towards women. There's quite a bit of sexual violence in this trilogy. So please be warned about the triggers here. I would say that this particular trilogy does take a very critical view of humanity, of religion, of free will, agency. And I think that the way that Baker did this was very impactful and fascinating, while at the same time very bleak and disturbing. But what made it so impactful for me personally had to do with his gift for his prose. So, like McCarthy, I would say that Baker has this gift for writing in a sophisticated way, for having such a command of language that makes you feel the gravitas of what is happening. And at the same time, he's able to juxtapose the vulgar with the beautiful, as I explained in my Prince of Nothing review. And I think that that adds to the disturbing factor. It did for me anyway. And at the same time, I just greatly appreciated what he did with that trilogy. It really got me thinking and has some really interesting metaphysics in the world as well. I do have a spoiler free review of this trilogy if you want to hear more thoughts, and of book one, The Darkness That Comes Before. Now, I haven't read Aspect Emperor, which is the continuation series from the Prince of Nothing trilogy, but I've heard from fans that that particular series gets even more disturbing, which is hard to imagine. She Who Fears Death by Nnedi Okorafor is a post apocalyptic book set in future Sudan. There is a woman who was attacked when her village was attacked. She was raped. She gives birth to a girl she names She Who Fears Death. And this book deals with genocide, mass rape, female circumcision, which is on the page. So that's why I definitely consider this one of the most disturbing books I've ever read. I would say that the bleak, graphic, uncomfortable content is mostly in the first quarter of the book, and then it turns more into a chosen one quest journey with the found family in the desert setting, and it has a very unusual ending. As far as I know, this is a standalone, and there might be an adaptation, but I really don't know much further than that. She Who Dreams in Blood is also a book I would consider making this list based on the ending alone. This is book two in the Obsidian Path trilogy, and this is a trilogy about a man named Kren who wakes up in the first book. He has no idea who he is, how he got where he was, and you follow his journey in first person narration as he uncovers the memories of his identity through gathering the shards of his black stone heart. So there's a supernatural element to this trilogy. And the second book, She Dreams in Blood, it has this whole nautical adventure. We have these island settings, but the end of that book is what makes the list for me because there are some crazy, gory things that happen at the end of book two that shocked me. That shocked the heck out of me, honestly. Now, even though this is a grim dark fantasy trilogy, I appreciate that for this trilogy as a whole, I didn't feel like it took itself too seriously at times. There was enough humor in there that I felt balanced a lot of that horrific stuff. So that made it tolerable. I think if the whole trilogy had been like the end of book two, though, I don't know if this trilogy would have been to my taste, but I really enjoyed it, and I did appreciate that very strong choice at the end of book 2. Uzumaki disturbed the heck out of me. I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. I know this won't be the case for everyone. People might laugh at me for choosing this book to add to the list, but honestly, I was disturbed by the spirals. I've had some really bad lapses with vertigo in the past, like really bad, that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. So when I was reading this book and there was some dizziness and some spiraling happening, and there were some really gross, gory things too. It really disturbed me. So I think this is more a personal thing for me, but I really appreciated the story too. It was just very unusual and interesting. So check out Uzumaki if you want to go down a weird rabbit hole of spirals. That is one I would recommend. My Dark Vanessa is another one that makes my list. While not horror or fantasy or post apocalyptic or apocalyptic or about bloodshed and violence, My Dark Vanessa makes my list because it really got under my skin. It disturbed me in a different way than any of the other books I'm going to mention here. It's about a young girl who's actually a woman when the story starts. It's kind of a framed narrative, and her remembering her past as a young girl who gets into a sexual relationship with her teacher. You see how she is groomed throughout the story and how she starts to realize that the things that she thought were romantic when she was younger might have been not so healthy, maybe toxic, maybe manipulative. And so you follow her on that journey of realization. It is so disturbing. At least it was for me reading from that perspective. I was very uncomfortable with it. It actually disturbed me for days after finishing the book, but it's one that I appreciated at the same time because I think it's a story and a perspective that needs to be told. It needs to be addressed. It definitely makes the list just in a different way. I'm just going to briefly mention this book because I didn't like it, and that's Fight Club. Now, I know this is a very popular book. I saw the movie many years before reading the book, and I think it's actually a very well written book. And I think if you're a fan of the movie, I highly recommend this book. But I just personally didn't like the movie. I didn't like the book. I don't like this time in pop culture history that this represents, like the Limp Bizkit music, that kind of scene. Number one rule of Fight Club is you don't talk about Fight Club. Like I said, I think what the author was going for, he delivered it. It made sense. It worked. It just wasn't for me. It's just not my aesthetic at all. but it did disturb me. It made me uncomfortable, probably not in a positive way at all, but it makes the list for that reason, I suppose. Dust of Dreams, Malazan Book of the Fallen makes my list. Now, there are a lot of brutal, graphic things that happen in Malazan Book of the Fallen. A lot of rape, rape of both men and women. I'm not saying it shouldn't be in there. I'm not saying that Erickson doesn't explore it with sensitivity, but there is a chapter in this book that is so brutal that I tell people that if they want to skip it, they should skip it. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. Different people come from different types of pasts, and it's just not going to be appropriate for everyone to read that chapter at all times in their lives. That doesn't make you any less of a fan of the series. That doesn't discredit people who don't like that chapter in any way. And I know some people had a positive experience reading that chapter in the sense that it made them think more deeply about certain things that happen in our world. I like this book? I love the book, honestly. I know that's going to sound strange to say, but I really loved this book. It was unusual in the sense that it doesn't start very dark in tone, this book, and it really takes a turn. It gradually becomes darker and darker, especially in the second half. And it's a book that has a really powerful ending as well, in my opinion, which leads you right into that last finale, book 10, The Crippled God. But this one does come with many warnings. In fact, I think it's important to say this up front, especially if you're somebody who's interested in Malazan Book of the Fallen. You need to be warned about these things because you don't want to get to book 9 and quit the series because of, you know, a chapter that you weren't prepared for. So that's why I feel the need to bring it up. I appreciated it, but really think that this comes with a big warning. Now, the book that inspired this video, Pet Cemetery by Stephen King. I just recently finished this book via audio with Michael C. Hall's narration, but I loved it so much that I immediately bought a physical copy so I could tab some things because there were certain details in this book that I thought were just brilliant. This book has to do with a married couple with two small children who move to a rural town, Ludlow, Maine, and decide to start a new chapter of their lives. So the male character, the father in this book, is the main character. He is a doctor, and he finds out, thanks to his neighbors, an elderly couple, an elderly man, that there's a pet cemetery in the woods near his property. You might know the story if you've watched the movie or if you're familiar with the book. I don't know how much of it is a spoiler. I have to say that this particular book is not only creepy and horrific and frightening, but it's also one of the deepest explorations of grief I've ever read in a fiction book. And I say that sincerely. I feel like I've read a lot of books that have dealt with grief before, but I was very impressed with the way it was explored in this book. It felt like I kept on thinking of the imagery of a whirlpool, like just a whirlpool that's just sinking you down deeper and deeper into this grief. But one thing that I appreciated was how the horror aspects of this book were so brilliantly connected to that exploration of grief, to the tragedy in this book, too. I think it's very tragic in many ways. So I was really impressed with this book, but it was very disturbing, especially in the second half, with the way it explores those themes and the way it ties in that horror. I know I'm keeping it vague here, but I really think that this was worth reading, not just for an entertaining horror book, but also, again, just for a really uncomfortable exploration of grief and how grief can change us. So, this was quite a powerful reading experience for me. All right, that's my list for now. So, please let me know in the comment section below if you've read any of these books or if there are any other books that you found very disturbing that you want to mention, or if you try to avoid disturbing content. I would just love to keep the conversation on this topic going in the comment section below. Please consider liking and subscribing if you enjoyed this video. And thank you so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day. Bye bye.